up? What's up? Welcome, folks, to another episode of the Art of Advocacy. If this is your first time, please smash that like button, subscribe, follow the channel, hit the bell so that you get notified every time we come on. I'm your host, Dr. Sheldon L. Akins. Guess what? This is my second show. So my main show is the Leading Equity Podcast, and we do the live stream every single Thursday at 6:30 p.m. Eastern. As always, show is sponsored by the book, Leading Equity, Becoming an Advocate for All Students. By the way, I'm going to give you a little heads up just because you're here with me, and feel free to say hello, those who are out there. But got a special event. Now, if you've been following the Leading Equity Center, you know that every January we come out with a virtual summit. This year coming up, January 2023, we got something special happening, and I'm in the process of putting everything together. It won't be a virtual summit. It's going to be a little different. Okay, it's going to be more of a masterclass. You know, one of the biggest requests I get, like at least once or twice, maybe once or twice a month. Yeah, maybe a little bit more than that. I get requests for information and support for working with student affinity groups, and this comes up a lot. And so as a result, I'm creating a masterclass where we will be working with you, those who sign up for this program. You get information on how to facilitate, how to run student affinity spaces, not just venting sessions, right? Not just time where they get together and just talk for an hour. No, we're digging into topics. We have content, we have curriculum and instructional practices. I'm going to teach you how to do all those things. So stay tuned. I will be giving you more information in the next couple, it's end of October. So probably in the next couple months, we'll be giving more and more information as to what that is all going to entail. Now, for today's episode, we got a special guest. Dr. Verenice Gutierrez is with us. I'm really excited to bring her on. We're going to be talking about doing equity work from a leadership perspective and the importance of systematizing this work. There's nothing worse than having initiatives created and then someone leaves from that department, moves on to something else, and then you almost like you had to start over. Someone else comes in, and maybe they have their own goals, they have their own plans. What do you do when an individual leaves an organization in the process, in the middle of change strategies? How do we make sure that the work can continue, almost as if they didn't even need that person there? The work continues on. That's the conversation that we'll be having today. Dr. Verenice Gutierrez is a nationally recognized leader on bilingual education, diversity and inclusion, racial equity, and educational leadership. Working directly with school and district administrators, Dr. Gutierrez leads a national dialogue on the intersectionality of bilingual and special education. So, without further ado, I'm going to bring on Dr. Gutierrez. Thank you so much for joining us today. How are you doing today?
I'm doing good. I've never been introduced to applause like that. That was pretty radical, pretty cool.
Hey, folks love that. I don't know. That's my favorite sound effect. I got a few on here, but that's probably my favorite one. So, I'd like to bring you on. If I could clap for you, I would love to do that. So it's just one of those things, you have the sound effect and it just works out. So I'm glad that you're here. Now I just read 2 sentences of your bio. So I'd love for you to take a little moment to share a little bit about yourself and what you currently do.
Absolutely. So the bio I sent you is everything to do with, professional and how I have conformed to whiteness and, the quote unquote norm. That's not really how I introduce myself anymore. I will say I currently serve as the Assistant Superintendent of Equity and Supports for Albuquerque Public Schools. Very proud to have joined Albuquerque and very honored to be in that role. But who I am beyond the professional, really my ancestral lineage is where I'm at, and the people that I come from, and the shoulders that I'm standing on. So I am a first generation um, graduate with each of the different degrees. But my ancestors were very poor and very undereducated, and just discovering the resiliency that they handed down from one generation to the next so that I could be where I'm at now. That's really what defines me at this point in time in my life. So I'm very honored and humbled by the people that paved the way for me to be sitting here with you tonight.
Yeah, yeah, I understand. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about. So you work in Albuquerque at one of
Mhm.
the school districts out there. What does your job entail?
So the Albuquerque School District is actually the district in the city. We serve the entire city of Albuquerque, have 150 schools, and that's inclusive of some of our charters and different kind of learning spaces. 73 to 75,000 students. We do have declining enrollment because we are an urban school district. Um, and in my role, I oversee quite a bit. So I oversee counseling, social workers, nursing, family engagement, Title I, McKinney-Vento, equity, refugee services, Indian education, trying to make sure I don't leave anybody out.
I know, right? Sheesh.
Yeah,
Is that
so
enough already?
it's equity and student supports. So really,
Uh-huh.
a lot of the departments that offer supports fall under my department, if you will, or my division.
So do you work with special education as well?
It's not one that I oversee, but my colleague Anitra Antler and I both started this year in our roles, and we're collaborating quite a bit. And I will tell you, special ed is very near and dear to my heart.
Yeah.
I actually hold a dual master's in bilingual special education. And so I always find a way to make sure we're supporting our neurodiverse students.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Now, I want to touch on bilingual just for a moment
Sure.
because I see a lot of folks saying, bilingual is limiting our kids because we got kids that can do 3 or 4 or 5, 6, 7 different languages, and we should maybe talk more on the multilingual perspective as opposed to bilingual. I'm curious, what are your thoughts on that? Do you feel like bilingual education should be more on the multi? Should be, I guess, is it a matter of semantics? Maybe that it should be more on multilingual. What are your thoughts?
So it's a complete myth
Mhm.
that if a child learns more than one language, they're going to be confused. Absolutely not. The research is very clear. The more languages you know, the stronger your brain is. It's a muscle.
Mhm.
And if you have, if your brain is thinking in all those languages, you're creating all these synapses and, just making the muscle stronger. I personally am bilingual. Spanish
Mhm.
is my first language. English is my second language. I wish that I knew Arabic because my ancestors were from Lebanon and Afghanistan. I don't know Arabic. Um, but the more, and really, if you stop and think, how difficult is it to be thinking in your native language and automatically translating it into your second language so that it comes out of your mouth in that way? And some
Yeah.
of the stuff in your native language does not translate. So then you have to work a little bit harder to still deliver the message. So I can go on bilingual education forever, but yeah, like the more languages, the better. Um, Unfortunately, after the age of 8, it becomes more difficult to learn another language. So if we could raise our babies, that I love people who are like, I only speak English to my kiddo, I only speak Spanish to my kiddo, and oh, grandma can speak French, so grandma's only going to speak French to them. I think that's just beautiful
Yeah.
and a gift.
Absolutely. Okay, I sidetracked us just a moment, just because that's what I do. Now, okay, let's get into the topic. Let's get into today's
All right.
topic, which is about doing equity work from a leadership perspective. So I
Yeah.
want to start off by kind of getting your thoughts regarding systematizing, what does that look like when it comes to doing equity work?
So I started doing racial equity work as a building principal. And when I left my building, I saw how quickly the next principal was able to dismantle a lot of the work that I had done and put in place. Unfortunately, I hadn't left enough systems to survive my departure and continue the work. So when I became the director of educational equity and access for the Salt Lake City School District, the first thing I did was sit and talk with the superintendent and my supervisor and say, we need to engage in an equity work from a perspective of systemic paradigm shift. Equity cannot be an initiative. Equity cannot be a program. Equity is definitely not a curriculum. It must be a systemic paradigm shift from the superintendent and the board all the way down throughout the organization. Everybody has to be engaged in delivering equity work. If equity happens only because I enter the room, then I'm not doing my job, and that's not equity. So she agreed, and we started out with, what do we even mean by equity? The vision for Salt Lake City is equity and excellence. What does that mean? Do we have a definition? They did not. They had actually 7 different definitions, one for each board member,
Wow.
and then another one for the superintendent, and then another one for me. So that was the first thing. We needed a definition that everyone in the system knew that that's what we meant by equity within the Salt Lake City School District. And I will tell you, before I left Salt Lake, the board formally adopted the definition that we put forward. They formally adopted it, and they became the first school district in the state of Utah to have a formally adopted equity definition for the district. So I give kudos to that board for doing that. We didn't go with a graphic, the graphic with the fences or the apples or the bike, whatever.
I hate that.
I know. I was like, no, that's not what we mean. And to be honest with you, I had a committee. I was very clear with the superintendent. There's 7 negotiating associations in that district. And I said, I need a member from each negotiating association. So I had custodial, transportation, nutrition services, teachers, administrators, classified, secretarial. They were all represented on my committee. And the person who represented transportation was actually a trans woman, who in the process of this work was able to change her birth certificate and her driver's license. So we were able to celebrate with her that milestone. But that group of people, there were 15 of us. It took us 4 2-hour meetings to debate what the definition should include. And I could not interrupt that dialogue because we all had to agree on the definition, take it back to the people that they were representing, bring it back, wordsmith it. So it was that important that everybody in the district know this is what we mean by equity. And then once we had that definition, we built the framework around the definition. And the next step, if I were still there, would have been to develop the strategic plan around the definition and the framework. So that's what I meant by we have to systematize it so that it permeates the organization.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. Just going back to your comments regarding that graphic here. For those who aren't familiar, this is the one. I hate this one. I have so many reasons why I hate this topic, or this image, if you will. My main issue with this image is, why don't you just give them tickets to the game? To me, that's the equity piece where you got, they're still watching from behind the fence. So everybody in the stands still has the privilege of watching the game. So we don't discuss that. My thing is, give them, if let's say it costs $10 to get in this game, if the first person on the left, if they need $5, if someone else needs $4, someone else needs $10, that's the equity, but they got in the game. And so
Right.
that's all. That's my issue with this graphic. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have several issues with this one, and like I said, it morphed into the apple tree, and now it's morphed into
Yeah,
the bicycle. Um, no matter what graphic we use and how we paint it, you're right. It just opened up the stadium.
yeah.
And yes, some people are going to sit in the nosebleeds, and some people are going to sit. I'm gonna relate this to football because we are a football family and we're Raider fans. Don't hold that against us.
I didn't say
But
nothing.
some people, some people are on the 50-yard line, and some people are up in the nosebleeds. But you get to see the game from different perspectives, so that brings
Mhm.
in multiple perspectives. And then you have the jumbotron, so
Yeah,
that no matter where you're sitting in the stadium, you can look at the jumbotron and still have a really good view, right?
absolutely.
So, yeah, I'm with you. We did not use these graphics, didn't want to refer to
Good.
them.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. So, okay, the thing that I like about this is, I would say this. Now, school leadership is different. Like principals, you'll see a principal that's been there 10 years and 10 plus years they've been a principal or maybe assistant principal leadership positions. Superintendents may not last as long. You don't see a lot of superintendents that have been around for 10 years and those kind of things. But I see that a lot of positions, for example, DEI positions, I'm the folks that I interact with, the folks that I work with, it's 2 to 3 years has been kind of the average that I'm seeing when it comes to doing equity work. And so what I'm seeing is you have someone fired up, brand new, hired for the position. They're fired up. They're excited for the opportunity. Year one may or may not go well, but then like I said, by the second or third year, we're replacing them, or they move on to another position, things like that. So I like the idea of systematizing because all the work, all the stuff that was done, um, sometimes can go away when a new
Yes.
person comes in, or they don't replace that person for another year, or it takes a while for those kind of things to come to happen. And so the work, who ultimately gets impacted are the students, right? The students are the ones who suffer with the change and transitions and things. So if I know that it's not just up to DEI leadership, but it also requires your whoever your building leader. Um, but what are your thoughts in regards to, again, maintaining a plan, whether that person is there or they're not there?
So I will tell you that burnout, DEI burnout, is real.
Hmm.
I experienced it. I was a department of one when it came to equity. And then I also had sub departments. I had refugee services, I had family and community engagement. So it wasn't just equity that I was focused on. But in the equity department, I was a department of one. That's the case for most people. People who have, multiple specialists or whatnot are very, very fortunate because that's typically not the case. Um, when you're somebody would send me an invite and say, "Hey, Verenice, we need you at this meeting because we need to talk about equity." I would say, "Well, why aren't you talking about equity?
Yeah.
Why do I need to be in the meeting for equity to be there?" So that was my response often, like, no, I'm not going to be your equity token. You can talk about equity. You need to
Hmm.
be uncomfortable. So I had to build a lot of that capacity, and people are afraid, justifiably so. You can't say, I'm attending the Council of Great City Schools conference, and I was in a session and said, we can't say SEL in Florida. And I thought, oh, goodness gracious. And I just said it, and I'm sitting here in Orlando, SEL, right? So you can't burn your people out, and you can't make that person the guru, the expert. Like, everybody has to jump into this work. But that's why there needs to be an organizational paradigm shift so that people don't see it's this one person. And typically, it's a woman or a man of color,
Hmm.
right? So we get tokenized in multiple ways. So I'm not going to go on that soapbox, but if we start to push back and start to build the capacity of everybody, and I will tell you, in Salt Lake, I'm going to shout her out. I don't know if she's listening right now or she might listen later. But our MTSS and SEL director, Emily Sutherland, who is a white woman, was an incredible ally. Incredible ally. And she took that on after she and I had a discussion about Bettina Love and being a co-conspirator. And I said, Emily, I need you to be my co-conspirator. I need you to leverage your whiteness, because as a white woman, they're going to listen to you before they listen to me as a brown girl. And it's always like, why am I a brown girl? Why am I not a brown woman? Why does she get to be a white woman? So there's all those kinds of dynamics, right? But having a co-conspirator who would speak up also helped to build the capacity. So I may be deviating from your question. You have to have those people. And I will tell you, of all of my employee groups, it was the custodial group who ran with the equity work. They were doing equity audits in their department without really a lot of guidance. They took off gathering data and doing all kinds of stuff. But the custodial group in that district was also the most diverse. And I hate that word, because what that means is they were the most brown and black group. Of course, right? Your custodians, your maintenance, your trades are going to be men and women of color. And they did phenomenal work that I wish all departments had done, because that's what we were aiming for. The like I said, permeate the organization so that everybody's engaged in the work. Everybody.
One of the things that you mentioned early on in your response was, and we see this a lot, those DEI positions, it's a party of one. And like you said, I've seen it at the district level, and I'm like, this is a large district. You got thousands of kids, and they're literally responsible or called in for every single thing outside of academic support. Okay, if it has to do with race, if it has to do with gender, if it has to do with LGBTQ plus, if it has to do whatever, language, all these different things, special education, like all these different things, they're called in to do it, and it's just them, and no staff. And then they do all the PDs as well. Yes. And then they don't have any hiring or firing authority. So while they're in these positions, they can highly encourage teachers to do certain things, but there really isn't any, I can highly encourage you to do it, but I can't make you do it. And so still there's a lot of push. And again, that's where that burnout comes in. Honestly, Verenice, I'm a little nervous for you, because when you said this is what I do over at Albuquerque, you named about 15 different departments that you oversee. So I worry, like, did you set yourself up for another opportunity for you to feel burnout, or do you have a team in your position to where you feel like you have that support?
So Albuquerque is about 3 times the size of Salt Lake City. I have a department. My equity department actually has several individuals. We have several equity specialists.
Good.
The difference being, my superintendent is incredibly supportive and invested in this, as is the board. Unfortunately, when I was in Salt Lake, I was there for 4 years, and I had 4 different superintendents.
Wow.
So that should tell you a little bit about the instability of that district. And I told my previous supervisor, she said, she might be watching as well, that I was going to be very candid, that that's a dysfunctional board. And so here in Albuquerque, we're not there. 2 of the pillars of the strategic plan specifically address equity. So a lot of the work that I was trying to do there has already happened here. And so that's a good thing. Is Albuquerque rocking it with equity? No, there's room to grow.
Oh yeah, always.
But the superintendent recognizes it, the board recognizes it. And the other piece about New Mexico, that I don't know if you know this, but New Mexico was sued, and they have this Martinez-Yazzie lawsuit. So they were sued by the tribes and the Latino community, and they won because it was proved that the state of New Mexico has done a really poor job of educating indigenous children and children of color. And so we have this lawsuit and that spurred legislation, and we are held accountable to Martinez-Yazzie.
Mm.
I love that. When they interviewed me, I actually said to the interview committee, I wish every state would get sued so that there would be these sanctions and we would have to be accountable. But is it perfect? No. But at least it's something that's constantly being analyzed and looked at. And there's accountability, which is the other piece of systematizing equity. If there's no accountability for it, then it's not going to happen. You alluded to this. In Salt Lake, I had influence, but I had zero authority. I was not a member of the cabinet. I didn't have any authority. So it had to be on my relationships with people and their willingness to engage in this work, because I couldn't go to a principal and say, listen, you're not doing what you need to do. So I'm going to put you on a plan of assistance or a plan of support, or I'm going to coach you, or like, I couldn't do that. No. I couldn't. I could just be really nice and be like, have you ever thought of, what do you think if? That's not going to make them.
That's a challenge, right? That's the challenge when you're in the position and you, like you said, I can approach a principal or staff member, whatever level, but I can't make them, I can highly encourage them. And depending on my relationship, depending on their mindset, depending on their beliefs, their bias, or whatever it is, will determine whether or not they're going to act upon your recommendation. But that's what you're doing, is giving recommendations, not mandates.
Right.
So, okay. Now, for you said as you have transitioned into your new position, and I know you're just kind of getting going, what are some of your initial, are you looking at maybe doing a 5-year plan, a 3-year, or are you just, like, what's your process now? Is it kind of just taking on some smaller things? Like, tell us a little bit as far as where you're at or your plan of action starting at this point.
So I'm very fortunate to have entered Albuquerque Public Schools at a point where they are about to develop the new 5-year strategic plan. Okay. Like I said, 2 of our pillars explicitly call out equity. We are working with the Council of Great City Schools, and the council has been very clear that we need to be student outcome centered, which I love, because if you're student outcome centered, then you have to consider equity. So those pieces are already there. The strategic plan will be a 5-year strategic plan, and we are going to have a lot of community input so that we know what are the values of the community. What does the community want? And I'm super excited that both the Council of Great City Schools and the consultant that is helping us to develop the plan have reached out to me and said, we need your expertise in reaching out to those communities that are the furthest away from access and opportunity. Because I've also spoken up and said, don't do surveys, don't have a meeting, like, don't just do that. You have families who are not going to do the survey. You have families who are not going to come to the listening session. If they're dependent on an hourly wage, they need the hourly wage to survive. They're not coming to a meeting. Great, you're translating everything to the top 10 languages. Just because this family speaks Swahili doesn't mean that they read and write Swahili, right? So I've been pushing these kinds of things, and now they're tapping into me. I actually ran into the superintendent in the hallway and I said, hey, I'm getting all these questions about family engagement. And he said, yeah, it's because of what you said about families who are further away from access and opportunity. And he was kind of teasing me. So it's like, okay, well, let's make it happen. How do we reach community? How do we get into community? Um, and in a very respectful way. The pueblos here in New Mexico are very important. How do we approach tribal leaders and get their perspective in a very respectful way? So, to answer your question, super exciting. The plan that we're going to develop for Albuquerque Public Schools for the next 5 years is going to be so equity and student outcome centered that I'm just giddy to be in the role right now.
That's awesome. And I'm excited for the district as well. I want to touch on the survey. I want to learn a little bit more because that seems to be a go-to for a lot of districts is let's throw a survey out, feedback survey, get your opinion. Give me a little bit more. I get that there's a lot of folks that aren't going to do the survey, but what are some other reasons that you feel like that's not the right approach? And then maybe what are some alternatives to doing the survey?
Yeah. So, I learned a really good lesson when I was in my assistant principalship. I was at a school that had a large Somali refugee population.
Mhm.
It was a Title I school, so we had to do that annual Title I address. And my principal did something really good. We went to the community. So
Okay.
we went and we got the community room at the apartment complex where they all lived. But when we were talking about science and social studies, they're like, "What's science? What is social studies? Like, we don't even know what you're talking about." So we had taken some steps to reach community, but we were so blinded by our educational lens and our educational speak. And that's the kind of thing. Like, if we had said government and economics and civic engagement rather than social studies, that would have made more sense. So that's kind of the thing. Like, the survey work, first of all, it's part of whiteness, right? The emphasis on the written word. Second of all, it's going to be edu speak. And we love our acronyms, right? And so if I give you a survey and I say to you, how do you feel we're doing with our SEL and our MTSS work? And you don't even know what is SEL and MTSS. Let me Google it real quick. And I bet you think that SEL is probably an acronym in another profession.
Mm-hmm.
MTSS might be an acronym in another profession.
Yeah.
And then they're going to look at this and they're going to be like, that doesn't make any sense. So how can I answer this Likert scale of 1 through 5 on SEL and MTSS if I don't even know what the heck I'm answering? So it's that kind of stuff. Like, can't we just sit with the community and say, do your kids feel welcome in our schools?
Yeah.
Do your kids feel valued in our schools? Do you think that we're too quick to suspend? I mean, all of that gets to SEL and MTSS, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without a survey and without acronyms. So that's what I mean. Like, let's meet community where they're at
Uh-huh.
and where it makes sense for them.
So more of the qualitative
Mhm.
data as opposed to the quantitative data. So then in that case, I see a lot of districts and schools doing focus groups and inviting parents, parent night or whatnot, and just taking some. Now here's the thing. I've seen open forum nights, and it has been, I just see some parents fired up, some guardians fired up, and then whoever's facilitating it. I remember going to one at a school, and the principal was kind of facilitating it, and a lot of parents were upset about how things were happening. And I saw the principal. I feel like at the end of that session, he regretted having that thing because it was just a bunch of trying to figure out the best way to say it. Like parents were very passionate with how their children were being educated, and they expressed that in a manner that I don't know if the principal was prepared for. And so as a result, I don't know if they were supposed to be like 4 planned for the year, but that was the only one that they ended up doing. So what are your thoughts when it comes to, okay, so let's stay away from the surveys, and here's why. Because, like you said, it's the jargon is an issue. There might be literacy might be a challenge for some folks, and you may not get a high participation. But on the other side, if we do the qualitative experience where we're doing focus groups or we're doing an open forum and those type of opportunities, there could be moments where a lot of negative comments come through. And again, how parents express themselves on a cultural basis might appear a certain way. What are your tips, maybe, or strategies for those like school leaders or those who are facilitating these type of forums to be able to collect that data in a way that is I'm trying to figure out the best way to say it. Like, what kind of tips would you say for anybody that's facilitating these type of events or forums?
So it's always a little bit of a challenge and a little dangerous to just have an open mic, right?
Okay. Yeah, definitely.
I would say, first of all, don't take it personally.
Mm-hmm.
They're attacking, if you will, the work, not necessarily you, the individual.
Okay.
Now, will that happen? Yes. I've had forums like that where they come after me and it's like, okay.
Mm-hmm.
But then I have to take even one more step back and remember that person doesn't know me as me, the human. And so when they're attacking me, it's their perception. And so you have to kind of not personalize is what I'm saying there. And then in terms of strategies, the first thing I thought of was do some Kagan structures. Why do you have to have everybody sitting in the room and people talking one by one? Why can't you do a gallery walk and have some people, standing at a poster and they can take, they can be the scribe? Why can't you do small table groups and people, take turns talking? When you do Kagan structures, you have like the talking stick and you can't talk again until everybody's held the talking stick. So you just have to have really intentional and very well planned activities to gather the information so that it's not just people are waiting to get to the mic. You have to really stop and think about a really good adult learning theory, 8 minutes, and then people tune you out, and then the cell phones come out, and then I can start texting, or let me check what's happening on Instagram or Facebook. So the facilitators have to be very intentional in those engagement strategies that will gather the data and keep people moving. Because also, if you let somebody vent and they have a lot to vent about, and I'm sure you've seen it at a board meeting or two where people are like, okay, that's the end of your 2 minutes. And they're like, I need another 2 minutes. I'm just going to keep talking.
Yeah.
So very well planned out, very intentional. Use some Kagan strategies. If you're not Kagan trained, Google it. But they have the basic, like the gallery walk, turn and talk, heads together, all those kinds of strategies.
Got you. Okay, so one of the things I heard was don't take it personal, and that's hard to do. It's hard to do to remove yourself from this. And like I said, I've seen it from people feeling that they were okay. I'm not gonna go into too much detail, but I've been in a situation where a parent came in for an IEP meeting, and they were concerned with how their child was. The idea of maybe we need to make some adjustments or amendments to the IEP. That was kind of the overarching theme. But the one of the teachers felt like they were being attacked. Now, as the special ed director at that time, I was watching the parent and the guardian, and I did not think that they were being attacked. They were just very passionate, like they wanted the best for their child. At the end of the day, they just wanted the best for the child. But it was perceived or received by that individual that they were being personally attacked. And the meeting didn't go well. It ended early. The teacher ended up leaving. And so it ended up being a thing. And as I reflected on that opportunity or that moment, I'm like, literally everybody else in that space, like all my paraprofessionals, everybody that was in that space that witnessed this incident, were like, no, we didn't think that the guardian parent was yelling or attacking or any of those kind of things. And so I tried to talk to the teacher about it and try to have a conversation, but I don't know, emotions were high, and it just didn't go well. So that's the piece that I really honed in on that you initially started to respond to was the importance of not taking these things personal. But
Mhm.
again, that is hard. We live in an age with COVID teaching, where and COVID schooling, where shortages of if I'm a if I'm an administrator, I'm dealing with teacher shortages. I'm dealing with funding challenges. I'm dealing with what's CDC saying. I'm dealing with a lot of things. So I would encourage folks. Yes, that is important. And you just need to make sure that your mental health is I would say should be a priority as well, because I know a lot of us have a lot of personal things happening, and then we go to our jobs and we're supposed to be at our best, but at the end of the day we may not always be at our best.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I've been both. I've been the employee who has gotten reamed by a parent, and I've been the parent who has reamed an employee.
Mhm.
My son's high school principal knows exactly who I am, and he's been out of high school for 10 years
Mhm.
because he did something that I was not okay with. And I parked myself right outside his office. I knew he was there. His car
Mhm.
was in the parking lot. The secretary saw how angry I was, and she's like, "Oh, he's not available." I said, "You know what? I'm going to sit right here. I got my BlackBerry so I can answer my emails. He has to come out eventually. We're going to talk about what he did to my boy." But I came in hot. Like, "Oh,
Yeah.
you did not do that to my boy." Um, and at the moment, I probably did make it personal about it, but it wasn't him, the man, that I was upset with. I was upset with his behavior and the
Mhm.
impact it had on my boy. Right.
Sure.
And so I stayed professional, but I did tear into him.
Mhm.
And that's the piece of it's really, really difficult to do, to separate the behavior from the person. And there's all these things that you're supposed to tell kids. I still love you. I'm just really upset with your behavior,
Mhm.
not with you as a person,
Right.
but the fact that you drank all the milk and put the gallon back into the refrigerator empty. I'm upset with that behavior. I need you to change that behavior. Not, and that's not about that child as a human being, and good or bad. It's just about the behavior. Um, I'm not,
Absolutely.
but it's a skill to develop.
Yeah, yeah. And I agree, and I've done it too. I've my kids, they know what I do for a living, and so they're like, "Daddy, go to the school," and so that's kind of the thing. So I've always tried to figure out what's the best approach, because I've been a principal, I've been a teacher, and so I know what it's like to have an upset parent. So I don't want to be that upset parent, and so I do want to approach it as tactfully as possible, but sometimes emotions are high. And depending on the situation, especially if this is not the first time that the situation has occurred, we've already talked about this. Now I got to go back up to school again. Again, those can sometimes be a challenge. So just trying to navigate that. Um, Getting back to I guess the conversation
Yeah.
initially regarding systematizing our structures. I guess one of the other things that I heard you mention, and in regards to just making sure that this is a team effort and not just one person trying to do this, because again, if that one person leaves, then again you're at the risk of everything, that all the hard work that one person did gets dismantled and revisited. Let me ask you this: if I am an incoming staff that is walking into a position or a plan that's already been created by my predecessor, what type of suggestions or strategies would you give to that incoming individual to keep the systems going? Or do you think it is important to reevaluate things and see if there needs to be some changes made?
Absolutely. Yeah, because it's that forest for the trees. It took
Mhm.
me a lifetime to really understand that, because I'm a second language learner, and it made absolutely no sense. It's like forest for trees. But yeah, you get so deep into the work that you sometimes are missing something, and fresh eyes can catch what you're missing. Uh, I definitely think things need to be constantly re-examined. Um, I will tell you, I haven't been replaced yet in Salt Lake. And my previous supervisor is being very intentional in who she brings in because she wants to ensure that there's the continuity of the work and that the person that comes in with a very specific skill set. So that'll take time. It'll take time to find someone. I know I'm replaceable. I know I'm not like irreplaceable. I know I'm replaceable. There's somebody out there who will want to join the district and continue the work. That person just has not materialized yet. But even coming into Albuquerque and replacing the person that came before me, I'm doing a lot of mindful inquiry and listening and learning. There are some things that have been done that I kind of in my mind I'm like, well, that was not a good idea.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't have the historical context and I don't have all of the information that person had when she made the decision, right? And there was a specific superintendent, there were specific board members, there were specific dynamics with the community. Maybe they're still there, maybe they're not, right? So some of it I'm listening and learning and asking lots of questions. Some things I'm ready to change right now,
Mm-hmm.
but I did say to my new superintendent, I'm going to build relationships first.
Okay.
Because those relationships are going to be crucial for when I want to start exercising my voice a little bit more and when I want to make change. And then I will have gained people's trust and they will come along with me rather than coming in and saying, oh, this is wrong. Shouldn't be doing that way. So that's what I would say, like listen and learn, build relationship, build trust, and really get to know the context that led to the decisions that were made.
Yeah, absolutely. So listen is I think probably the main thing. I've made mistakes like coming into a new position and trying to implement all these changes because I was told during my interview, oh, well, we have this, we have that. And so, okay, I got hired to do these things, but not taking the time to really get to know the culture and the community, and the players, if you will, the folks that I need to, interact with, not taking the time to do those things, but just because, oh, I was hired for this purpose, but not remembering that, yeah, but you don't still, I mean, that was an interview. You spend an hour with this group of people that may or may not have even been in the school. They might be just board members or just kind of hiring committee. And so there's still information that you don't have yet. So
Yeah.
I love it. I'm loving your direction with the listening piece.
Yeah. And, one of my really close friends, we're great friends now. He used to be my supervisor when I worked in San Antonio. He used to tell me, Dr. G, you need to be a tempered radical. Because when I got to San Antonio, I was hired to turn the school around and I didn't have time for it. We got to turn it around. Texas does not mess around with accountability. And I was a bull in a china shop. Like, we're just going to do it. And I, dragged everybody along with me. And he would say, you need to be a tempered radical because you're stressing out the teachers. You're going to lose them. But I had 1 year to try to turn that school around. So I was under a lot of pressure. And I'll never forget those words, tempered radical. He's probably sent me the article 2 or 3 times. I always lose it. But there's an article out there that talks about being a tempered radical and how you get a lot more leverage to get the work done when you do that.
Absolutely. Well, tempered radical. I'm going to write that down just because I think that's important. Tempered radical. And is that your philosophy nowadays? When it like even when you came into your new position, was that kind of your motivating factor?
Yes, but I still let them know who I am. Several times during my interview, I used the phrase unequivocally and unapologetically student-centered because I wanted them to know I'm very personable. I work really, really hard to be smiley and friendly so that I don't fall into that angry Latina thing.
Uh-huh.
By the way, it only took 30 days in Utah for somebody to say that I was an angry Latina.
Mm.
And I was like, I'm not angry. I'm just passionate. Anyways, I wanted them to know that I will always put kids first.
Yeah.
That I wasn't going to show up and make adults comfortable.
Mm.
That I'm a change agent. So I did put those things out there. They hired me, but I've also come in with that tempered radical. So it's a balance that I have to strive to achieve every day between being unequivocally and unapologetically student-centered and being a tempered radical. Because I will tell you, my sense of urgency, like I don't have to, I say this to my husband and friends all the time, like I don't have time for this mess. There's kids
Yeah.
that we're
Yeah.
not meeting their needs on a daily basis. So I don't have time, but I have to make the time for the mess so that eventually we do get to the point where we are all unequivocally and unapologetically student-centered.
All right. Verenice, I definitely consider you as providing a voice in leading equity. I'd love for you to, wrap up your final thoughts. So, why don't you take us home?
Yeah, I'm in my 28th year of education, and I received what Dr. Angela Valenzuela calls subtractive schooling. I was at risk within the first hour of kindergarten because I didn't speak English, because I'm brown, because my parents were immigrants and my mom was a teenager. And they changed my name. I went from my actual birth name is Verenice, and I became Bernice, all within the first hour. That was in 1977. I currently have 2 nephews that are entering pre-K, and I'm seeing some red flags. And I think, how? 1977, 2022, why are we still doing things the exact same way? It has to change. I hope it happens in my lifetime. I will continue to advocate and will continue to push. It's not easy. Anybody who's listening, reach out to me via LinkedIn. We can get on a Zoom call and you can vent to me. I've been there, I've done it, happy to support. And, we're all together in this work for the kids. That's it. It's the kids.
It's the kids at the end of the day. So tell us, so I do have the LinkedIn scrolling down at the bottom here. Is that the best way to reach you online?
Yes, my email address and my Twitter handle are a combination, of bilingual master teacher. So it's BILMASTEAC. That's a little hard to remember. So if people reach out on LinkedIn, I am more than happy to connect and, like I said, collaborate, get on a Zoom. We're not going to do this alone. We have to do it together.
Absolutely. Whew. Well, Dr. Gutierrez is here. It has been a pleasure. It has been an honor. Thank you so much for your time. I know Albuquerque School District is blessed to have you. So thank you again.
Absolutely. This is great.
Yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Well, folks, that was a great conversation that I had with Dr. Gutierrez. One of my takeaways is the importance of any time that we're doing this work, and I see it a lot. I see it a lot where we have these DI positions, or maybe it's the leadership is pushing some change initiatives, and then they move on to a different position. They leave the district or leave whatever it is. They move on, and the work doesn't continue. And it's like the new person comes in, and it's like they had to start all over again. So it's really important that we create these systems that is set up so that 5 years from now, 3 years from now, 2 years from now, it's like a well-oiled machine. And that's something that we can set up, but we cannot set that up by ourselves. That is a team effort. That's something that we have to do together. So that was one of my big takeaways. And also the tempered radical, making sure that we listen, making sure that we don't just jump right in. We take some time to learn the culture, learn the community, learn where are some areas for growth, because there's always room for growth. So just another friendly reminder, Leading Equity, Becoming an Advocate for All Students is now available. Feel free to grab. The Audible version is coming out this week, I believe, as well. I think actually it came out today. Got a notification, I believe, that it was supposed to come out on the 20th. So if you want the Audible version, you can grab your Audible version as well if you want to listen. I narrated the book, so you can listen to me some more. But I appreciate your support in that aspect. Remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. If you can't fly, then run. If you can't run, then walk. If you can't walk, then crawl. But by all means, keep moving. Let's continue to be a voice in leading equity.